Hello and welcome to Ian's Music Room and the penultimate episode of my 4-track adventure. So I'm only going to do 2 more episodes of my 4-track adventure. This episode today, where I'm talking about a new composition and production idea that I've got set up around me. And the final episode will be a recorded performance of this composition. So recording each part in one at a time into the 4-track. So I've been absolutely loving the 4-track and this and re-acquainting myself with how I used to produce, record, compose and do music. So I have a previous episode about my thoughts on that, which I shall link in the description below. And I want to continue using the 4-track, using the particular production, composition, performance methods that I've reacquainted myself with through the 4-track. But I want to see how I can incorporate it into my day-to-day music making, rather than being a special thing I do and then come back from. Okay, so I'm sure I shall be doing some more YouTube videos on the 4-track and all that kind of stuff around it, but maybe in a slightly different format to these 4-track adventures. Okay, so back to this episode and this new composition production that I've got an idea for. So the initial idea is really surrounded around the contrast between sequenced music and live music, electronic music and more acoustic music. And also this idea of having fixed things which go with the sequence elements, and also improvised elements which go with the live playing. So it's a combination of all those different things, and to see how they can come together and somehow work together as one musical idea. So first of all, let's just quickly go through the setup that I've got here. So it's quite more adventurous than I have been doing with the 4-track. So this is an experiment in itself to see how I can combine quite a lot of different elements into the 4-track. So for the sequence elements, I'm using the Novation SL61 Mark III. So this is controlling my hardware synthesizers. I've got the Blofeld in the corner there, Waldorf Blofeld, and behind me I got the Novation Summit. So this is going to be controlling those hardware elements. It's also going to be triggering and controlling a drum pattern that I've got in the Electron model samples. Okay, so that's that electronic sequencing side of it. Have my WAL fretless bass, which I shall be using partly for bass line and melody. Should be going, I think, going back and forward between the two. And I've got that going into a compressor, and also this, I recently just got this Dreadbox Darkness reverb pedal, which I'm really liking. So that's a nice little touch to have on the fretless bass. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, the model samples is going into the Boss micro monitor, and this is actually from the 1980s. I think it's my cousin's before, and I borrowed it from him, so thank you. And this is a really great thing. It's got a huge great transformer in it, and it's actually broken. And that gives it this really kind of nice, kind of crunchy, gritty kind of sound, which adds a lot of interesting character to the drum beat coming from here. So I've got that going as well. And then that's going back into the 4-track. So over to this side, so I've got the bass, got the monitor and the pedals, and I've got a bit of percussion which I want to play in the live element. I've got this drum called the Udu drum, and I'm not a percussion player at all, so So that gives it's a really fantastic sound. I'm really liking this sound. So I should be playing this on top of the drum beat. Also got a few various odd bits of percussion, got a shaker, which I shall bring in parts, and also some Tibetan cymbals as well, which I might use in the more atmospheric bits. Let's see, give this a go. So that's a really nice sound, and quite relaxing actually as well. Okay, so that's the gear side of it all done. So that's all great. So moving on to the musical side, and this for me is a really kind of interesting bit. Gear's great, but it's inspirational and it's fun. But for me, it's there to serve the purpose of the music. And so this whole piece is going to be kind of like a electro, acoustic, jazzy, lo-fi type thing. I'm not a huge fan of putting labels on things, but it can be helpful. And rather than the composition being based on diatonic harmony and the major scale, it's based on a more modal idea of music. So for me, modal music is my favourite topic in music, and I am bound to do a whole series of more educational stuff on modes. But for now, a mode is a group of notes, a scale, and they have different characters and different flavours. So by combining different modes together, we can have different characters and flavours and colours of music. And also with modes, for me personally, when I think of chords in modes, then I'm not thinking of tertiary chords, so chords built up by thirds. So for example, a major chord is built on the root, third and fifth. It's very hard to play without looking. There you go, for me anyhow, as a non-keyboard player. So there you go, so that's a tertiary chord built up in thirds. So with modal harmony, I'm wanting to try and create the character, the colour of that scale, of that mode within the chord. So I want to kind of combine notes in a slightly different way. Okay, so I'm just going to pop my headphones on so I can hear what I'm doing. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I'm building up this harmony in a modal way. So one of the modes I'm using is the A harmonic minor. So that's the root, second, minor third, fourth, fifth, flat six, major seventh, and octave. So rather than building up, as I said before, in tertiary in thirds, which is great, that's absolutely great. But I want to try and capture the flavour, the character, the colour of the mode rather than a bulk standard chord. So for me, the interesting notes that give the real character is the flat six and that major seventh. So for example, building up a more modal chord voicing, I could use the root, that flat six, major seventh. Let's use the minor third and the fifth. So for me, that's a really rich sound, which kind of shows off the character of a harmonic minor. Another example that I'm using the Dorian mode. So for Dorian mode, if you're in C, if you think C major scale, but play D to D. That's a Dorian mode, okay? And it's one of my favourite modes. And if you want to hear Dorian mode in action, listen to Miles Davis' So What from the album Kind of Blue. It's probably the most famous, definitely the most famous jazz song, jazz tune, which uses modes and particularly the Dorian mode. So I'm going to be using the Dorian mode, and also I'm going to be using the Dorian sharp 11. Okay, so Dorian sharp 11. So in E, go on E, F sharp, G, A sharp, that's a sharp 11, B, C sharp, D, E. So regular Dorian would just have a regular fourth in it. So an A in this case. But because it's a Dorian sharp 11, the A is going to be sharp. So again, I don't want to build a chord in a tertiary way, using thirds, which would sound like this. Just a regular minor chord, actually. I want to try and bring out the character, the flavour of this E Dorian sharp 11 mode. Okay, so for example, I could have the E down here. What else could I have? I could have the 6, so that major 6, that's a characteristic note. Definitely want to get in that that sharp 11 there. Maybe the 5th next to it, that's an interesting element. And the 7th, that's quite interesting, actually. Yeah, I'm not sure that's a voicing I've got programmed into this, but I'm going to remember that, so that's good. Yeah, so much more interesting and evocative, and it really brings out a certain flavour. And for me, that's the whole point of this modal kind of composition style. It's got really interesting characters and colours and flavours, which we can explore harmonically and also in a melodic way. Which brings me on to the melody. So we have a magical cut in the video with me and the bass now. So I'm going to talk about the melody and the melodic ideas which have come into this composition. So when I first thought of this composition, it was going to be a little bit slower and more 16th based, kind of funky. And I had composed a few melodic ideas for that. So that's just one element of it. But the composition's kind of changed a little bit. It's a little bit quicker actually, but it's 8th note based. So I kind of lost a bit of that funky stuff, and it's gone a little bit more dreamy. So that melody doesn't quite work as well. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to improvise around those ideas which I had previously thought of, and see what comes out, but in this different style. So for example, that bit I just played is a bit in a composition where the modes go from F Dorian to D flat major, back to F Dorian, and to Mixolydian, B flat Mixolydian with a sharp 11. So B flat Lydian with a sharp 11, it's like a regular Mixolydian, but rather than playing the perfect fourth, you sharpen it. So B flat, that's a sharp 11 there. So it's got the same kind of character as Mixolydian, but just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exotic, if you like. A little bit more colour, a little bit more flavour, and slightly different character. So that's what I'll be doing in that little bit. So improvised melody based on a previous idea that I had. And then so there's going to be a bit on A harmonic minor, which is probably going to be more bass line for this. And then on the Waldorf Blofeld, I'll probably use that in some more melodic context, again improvised. And then there's another bit where I go from D Dorian to that E Dorian of the sharp 11, which I spoke about before. So again, I had some pre-existing ideas, but I'll be using that as a basis for improvisation. Okay, so that's a D Dorian bit. And then for the E Dorian for sharp 11, I really want to try and emphasize that sharp 11, because that's the interesting note, which really brings out the flavour. That's the sharp 11 there. Okay, so that's a little bit about the melody. So I've got my ideas pretty solid. I know what modes I've got to use. I've got different sections. I'm not sure how the sections are going to form quite yet. And I've got melodic ideas which can go with the different sections, the different modes. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to play out with a few ideas. So I'll just have the sequence going on the, so this is going to be the sequence from the summit, playing the harmony, drum beat from here, going into here, going back into here, and yeah, the bass playing around with some different things. Okay, so before I play, please do like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you for listening, and yeah, I shall see you in the last episode of my 4-track adventure, where all this will magically come together. Okay.
Thank you.